In the last video, we saw that having an equation allows us to make predictions and solve problems that we might care about. So in this video and the next, we're going to focus on how to use data combined with an assumption of linearity in order to generate these equations that we can then go on to use to solve these problems. We're going to assume linearity, that is a constant absolute rate of change. In this case, assuming linearity, we need two pieces of information. Right? And this kind of goes back to Euclid, right? Ancient Greek geometry. 2 points uniquely make a line. So that information can come to us in the form of a slope and a point, or it could be 2 points. We're going to focus on getting that information in verbal descriptions. In this video, we'll focus on what to do when the information is a slope and a point. And in the next one, we'll talk about what to do when the information is 2 points. So let's start with our World of Warcraft example, because we've already gotten this information before. So here's how we can interpret these statements to construct the equation. So we're told at the initial level, we get 45 XP for killing an equally leveled monster or beast, and that the number of XP we get goes up by 5 per character level. So that first statement, that's the initial value. That tells us our B, right? What we start with. And the second, notice it has change word, goes up by, right? So that's slope, right? So that tells us that M equals 5. So now, if you know y equals mx plus b, you slide those numbers in for m and b, and then you use appropriate variables instead of x and y. In this case, our y is xp, and our x is cl, and I sometimes have the habit of writing this as b plus mx instead of mx plus b. And there's our equation. So when you're given both the slope and the intercept, you can just slide that information in. However, often we're not given the slope and the intercept, we're given the slope and another point. So here's a demand example. Remember here that our variable q, which is our x, is measured in thousands. So the first sentence says to sell an additional 1,000, that means increase q by 1, we reduce the price by 20. Notice the change words, sell an additional, reduce by. That tells us that this is the slope. In particular, because what we sell, those are our x's. So that first part before the paragraph says x changes by 1. Well, what is that? That's our run. Then the second part after the comma says y goes down by 20. That's our rise. So since this statement gives us a run of 1, it tells us exactly what our slope is. And it tells us that our slope is negative 20. The second statement, to sell 15,000, we charge $1,500. This doesn't have any change words. This is telling us a point, a state of being. Now, remembering that our x is in thousands, this tells us that if x is 15, our y, the price we should charge, is $1,500. So that's a point, 15, 1,500. So how do we use this information to get y equals mx plus b? Well, we're given the slope. That's our first parameter. So we can write down a partial equation, y equals negative 20x plus b. X and y are the variables that we want to see how they're related. B is a thing we need to figure out still to have a complete equation. Well, how can we do that? Well, we have one other piece of information, the point. So we can plug in the coordinates of those points and solve, and that'll be an x is 15, y is 1500, leaving us with one unknown, the value b, our intercept, our initial value. So plug those in. We plug in 1500 for y, 15 for x, and we've got 1,500 equals negative 20 times 15 plus b. And now solve for b. Negative 20 times 15 is negative 300. So we add 300 to both sides, and you get b equals 1,800. Now we have both m and we have both b. This is enough information to write down the equation. So given m equals negative 20 and b equals 1,800, we can just simply slide those in for m and b in our y equals mx plus b equation. And we get y equals negative 20x plus 1,800. However, we've got to remind our readers the context and what x and y are. So let's use the variables that are appropriate to our scenario. So our y, what we're calculating with this formula, is the price we should charge, so that's a p, and the input, what that depends on, is the quantity we're trying to sell. That's q. So I just replace y by p and x by q. Just a side note, some of you may just keep p's and q's going throughout, or whatever the variables you need for your scenario throughout the problem, and that's fine. But for some of you, that may mix you up a little bit. It may help you lose your orientation. So one way around that is to figure out which is x, which is y, do all of your work with x's and y's, but don't forget at the end to replace your variables with scenario-appropriate variables. In the next video, we're going to look at examples where instead of a slope and a point, we're just given 2 points.